All right. And then we are on chapter 21, section 7, the last unanswered question. So I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen so we can get to the reading. And after we read the first section, we can discuss it. All right. Yeah, Course in Miracles, chapter 21, section 7, the last unanswered question. Do you not see that all your misery comes from the strange belief that you are powerless? Being helpless is the cost of sin. Helplessness is sin's condition, the one requirement that it demands to be believed. Only the helpless could believe in it. Enormity has no appeal save to the little, and only those who first believe that they are little could see attraction there. Treachery to the Son of God is the defense of those who do not identify with him. And you are for him or against him. Either you love him or attack him. Protect his unity or see him shattered and slain by your attack. No one believes the Son of God is powerless, and those who see themselves as helpless must believe that they are not the Son of God. What can they be except his enemy? And what can they do but envy him, his power, and by their envy, make themselves afraid of it? These are the dark ones, silent and afraid, alone and not communicating, fearful the power of the Son of God will strike them dead, and raising up their helplessness against him. They join the army of the powerless to wage their war of vengeance, bitterness and spite on him, to make him one with them, because they do not know that they are one with him. They know not whom they hate. They are indeed a sorry army. Each one is likely to attack his brother or turn upon himself, as to remember that they thought they had a common cause. Frantic and loud and strong, the dark ones seem to be. Yet they know not their enemy, except they hate him. In hatred, they have come together, but have not joined each other. For had they done so, hatred would be impossible. The army of the powerless must be disbanded in the presence of strength. Those who are strong are never treacherous, because they have no need to dream of power and to act out their dream. How would an army act in dreams? Any way at all. It could be seen attacking anyone with anything. Dreams have no reason in them. A flower turns into a poisoned spear. A child becomes a giant, and a mouse roars like a lion. And love is turned to hate easily. This is no army, but a madhouse. What seems to be a planned attack is bedlam. The army of the powerless is weak indeed. It has no weapons and it has no enemy. Yes, it can overrun the world and seek an enemy, but it can never find what is not there. Yes, it can dream it found an enemy, but this will shift even as it attacks, so that it runs at once to find another and never comes to rest in victory. And as it runs, it turns against itself, thinking it caught a glimpse of the great enemy who always eludes its murderous attack by turning into something else. How treacherous does this enemy appear, who changes so it is impossible even to recognize him. Yet, hate must have a target. There can be no faith in sin without an enemy. Who that believes in sin would dare believe he has no enemy? Could he admit that no one made him powerless? Reason would surely bid him seek no longer what is not there to find. Yet first he must be willing to perceive a world that where it is not. It is not necessary that he understand how he can see it, nor should he try. For if he focuses on what he cannot understand, he will but emphasize his helplessness and let sin tell him that his enemy must be himself. But let him only ask himself these questions, which he must decide to have it done for him. Do I desire a world I rule instead of the one that rules me? Do I desire a world where I am powerful instead of helpless? Do I desire a world in which I have no enemies and cannot sin? And do I want to see what I denied because it is the truth? You may already have answered the first three questions, but not yet the last, for this one still seems fearful and unlike the others. Yet reason would assure you they are all the same. We said this year would emphasize the sameness of things that are the same. This final question, which is indeed the last you need decide, still seems to hold a threat the rest have lost for you. And this imagined difference attests to your belief that truth may be the enemy you yet may find. Here then would seem to be the last remaining hope of finding sin and not accepting power. Forget not that the choice of sin or truth, helplessness or power, is the choice of whether to attack or heal. For healing comes of power and attack of helplessness. Whom you attack, you cannot want to heal, and whom you would have healed must be the one you chose to be protected from attack. And what is this decision but the choice whether to see him through the body's eyes or let him be revealed to you through vision? How this decision leads to its effects is not your problem, but what you want to see must be your choice. This is a course in cause and not effect. Consider carefully your answer to the last question you have left unanswered still, and let your reason tell you that it must be answered and is answered in the other three. And then it will be clear to you that as you look on the effects of sin in any form, all you need do is simply ask yourself, is this what I would see? Do I want this? This is your one decision. This, the condition for what occurs. It is irrelevant to how it happens, but not to why. You have control of this. And if you choose to see a world without an enemy, in which you are not helpless, the means to see it will be given you. Why is the final question so important? Reason will tell you why. It is the same as are the other three, except in time. The others are decisions that can be made, and then unmade and made again. But truth is constant and implies a state where vacillations are impossible. You can desire a world you rule that rules you not, and change your mind. You can desire to exchange your helplessness for power and lose this same desire as a little glint of sin attracts you. And you can want to see a sinless world and let an enemy tempt you to use the body's eyes and change what you desire. In content, all the questions are the same, for each one asks if you are willing to exchange the world of sin for what the Holy Spirit sees, since it is this the world of sin denies. And therefore, those who look on sin are seeing the denial of the real world. Yet the last question adds the wish for constancy in your desire to see the real world. So the desire becomes the only one you have. By answering the final question, yes, you add sincerity to the decisions you have already made to all the rest. For only then have you renounced the option to change your mind again. When it is this you do not want, the rest are wholly answered. Why do you think you are unsure the others have been answered? Could it be necessary they be asked so often if they had? Until the last decision has been made, the answer is both yes and no. For you have answered yes without perceiving that yes must mean not no. No one decides against his happiness, but he may do so if he does not see he does it. And if he sees his happiness as ever changing, now this, now that, and now an elusive shadow attached to nothing, he does decide against it. Elusive happiness, or happiness in changing form that shifts with time and place, is an illusion that has no meaning. Happiness must be constant because it is attained by giving up the wish for the inconstant. Joy cannot be perceived except through constant vision, and constant vision can be given only those who wish for constancy. The power of the Son of God's desire remains the proof that he is wrong who sees himself as helpless. Desire what you want, and you will look on it and think it real. No thought but has the power to release or kill, and none can leave the thinker's mind or leave him unaffected. Dun, dun, dun. Good to see you, Tim. Nice to see you, Carol. Everybody's going to call you Denise, Tim. You might want to unmute yourself. I can see that you are muted.
Yeah, my ego loves to be unmuted.
Yeah.
I just like to, it struck me that one of the key things I got from that, and I was distracted somewhat just coming on, but vision, and I just looked it up in the glossary Ken Wapnick that put out that almost everybody knows about. But vision just says the perception of Christ or the Holy Spirit that sees beyond the body to the spirit. It is our true identity. The vision of forgiveness and sinlessness through which is seen the real world. Vision is purely internal, reflecting a decision to accept reality rather than judge it. Thus, it is not to be equated with physical sight. No pun intended, but I think we lose sight of that quite often. So,
Sure.
Yeah, that pretty much for me says it. It's like we turn for reality out here, and we tidy things up and pretty things up and paint them and all this good stuff. It's absolutely meaningless. Anyway.
I agree. And you know, it's interesting too, because it's so easy to see how we vacillate on these questions, right? Do I desire a world I rule instead of one that rules me? Well, yes, we would all say yes, we want that, right? But then all of a sudden something happens and we become the victim and we become helpless, right? So we vacillate back and forth. Same with number 2. Do I desire a world where I am powerful instead of helpless? Well, sure, we can answer yes to that, right? Unless something happens and we forget, and then we'd feel helpless again, right? And do I desire a world in which I have no enemies and cannot sin? Of course, we would all say yes to that. That's what we desire. And then all of a sudden, we see ourselves against something else. We judge something and see an enemy in something where, you know, there is no enemy. And I think that's why it is so important, the last question. And do I want to see what I denied because it is the truth? right? When we can answer yes to that, then all the others become a definite yes.
So there's a section in earlier on in the course in let's see, just a second, in paragraph, I'm sorry, chapter 2, section 5, paragraph 8. It begins by telling us that the fear of healing arises in the end from any unwillingness to accept unequivocally that healing is necessary. So that's the first parameter here in terms of answering those questions. If I don't really want healing all the time, then in fact I'm going to find myself with this other problem. What the physical eye sees is not corrective, nor can error be corrected by any device that can be seen physically. As long as you believe in what your physical sight tells you, your attempts at correction will be misdirected. The real vision is obscured because you cannot endure to see your defiled altar. But since the altar has been defiled, your state becomes doubly dangerous unless it is perceived. So if I don't perceive, in fact, my need for healing, and if I don't recognize my constancy of this need for healing, then in fact, how can I rest in the recognition of this truth that I can see through my need? So I see through my need to the healing, and then I can see, or not with my eyes, but then I don't need a device. I don't need any physical senses neither to see the recognition of this truth that he's talking about here in this section. This is an interesting section. I wish I had thought of it when that question was asked of me. Why do I have to doubly? Why do I have to? Let me see. I had COVID. Did I tell you that?
No.
Yeah. It's pretty much gone. But why does my state become doubly dangerous? That was the question to me. And that paragraph didn't seem to explain it to the person that asked about it. I thought it was very clear, but it didn't seem clear to this person. And the fact of it is to see there's that extra little, there's that shift that occurs. If I stay within the fact that I'm controlled by my problems, I'll never escape from that. I have to have the courage to take my mind back from that and step back from it and let the Spirit show me something different, because it's not possible otherwise. I'm stuck within that force field, or that fear.
Victimization, right?
The victim and the victimizer are both really the same dude.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. Good to have you join, Carol. I know you've just joined during that reading. Nice to have you here today.
Hi, Carol.
Hi, thank you. Is anyone else hearing a buzzing?
I think that's on Eric's end. Eric has a little bit of a noise background happening.
I have my volume way up because somebody couldn't hear me. Is that better?
It's a little better. It's always still a little bit of a buzzing noise when you're on. We just know it's Eric, right?
Eric with a buzz. Oh boy.
So anybody else have any other questions about what we just read?
Just that little thing right there, if we just I'm trying to own and Pam, who knows me very well, being over here around the Tallahassee area, if we can, and several of us talk this way, another fellow named Ted that I hope to get on here, is the levity, the seeing of this stuff. Yeah, it's all, it appears very heavy duty, like, oh God, if I don't take responsibility, I'm going to waste my life or whatever, but if we can just, I don't know, just, it's difficult to explain, but just seeing beyond to this certainty. I know that certainty is there, and it's out of laziness and thinking other things are more important, that I delay, that, I don't meditate the first thing in the morning and so forth. So it's getting back to the point, if we can see the humor, if we can laugh with another person, different political party, different religion, whatever, if we can see, I guess it would be that we're all born of that same spirit. We all live in that same spirit constantly. We're just not aware. And by that knowing of that, the humor can come through too. And that's been something that's helped me a lot. So anyway, I'll be quiet.
No, that's a good point. I've been actually listening to some great podcasts. The Mark Groves podcast, he's actually a specialist in human communication. And he's had a lot of great interviews with people about communicating and really getting beyond seeing the differences. And it's been very empowering listening to that perspective of the openness and just seeing the person without judgment, without having to go into that place of judgment and fear and becoming the victim and trying to find a blame, just seeing the true essence of the person.
His name is Mark Groves, Groves.
Yeah, I'll see if I can share it in the chat.
Well, if you can't, I'll just look him up.
Sure. I always like to expand my awareness.
Yeah, something that jumps out at me time and time again is that, and someone did a sermon on this actually, that they were equating wars and people not getting along and the problem with, I guess, what's happening throughout the world, that we do not respect each other's belief system or religions. And that causes a lot of chaos, which brings me to Joyce was a person who was into the course. She was everything spiritual, et cetera, et cetera. And then her grandson became full-blown Catholic. Okay. Oh. And it was funny because at the beginning, when she used to talk about it, she was like stressing out, and so all this came along at around the same time, where this interfaith minister talked about the whole religion thing and not respecting each other's religion, and that kind of brought it full circle, that and it's all about communicating, and even for me, when I come across people that are completely right wing, whatever you want to call it, the same thing happens, and immediately I go into that thought of like, okay, you know what, you got to see this as this person is in the light of God, holy child of God. And I try to concentrate on the fact that, teach only love, and that's what we are. And and that seems to settle. Once you become settled, it settles whatever conversation you're having that could get out of hand, potentially dangerous, right? And this is like the final question is, do you, and I think it says it even in this book, I'm not sure where the line came from, right? Would you rather be happy or be right?
Oh yeah.
Right. And I like what you said, Ernesto. Once you become settled, then everything's settled. You just have to work on yourself. We spend so much time sometimes, or I should say when I get into situations where I can perceive that someone else is wrong, right? And I could perceive where they should or could change their perspective, and it has nothing to do with me. Their opinion is none of my business, because it has nothing to do with me. And if I just get myself settled, if I just get myself right, then everything's right.
Some people have to see for themselves that what they understand makes sense to them. So I'm a person that I seem to suffer while I don't understand it. And I seem to need to understand it. And then I realize, so what am I doing? I'm actually suffering over the fact that I don't understand something that really doesn't make sense. And I'm trying to make sense of all of this, all these different factions and all this different aspects of what's going on. And it does make sense in a way, but it doesn't make sense in terms of what it is that we can do about it and how it can be dismantled and all that sort of stuff. Isn't to do with what I was suffering from. It's to do with seeing through it, to be peaceful about it, and then perhaps there would be some opportunities to help somebody. Helping somebody is the only way through it, really. And the Course tells us that in the second chapter, that we want to be truly helpful to others, and it tells us we'll also be directed about how to do that. And that's, I guess that's what I'm beginning to see finally. You know, I have this frustration with Course in Miracles students. Oftentimes they don't want to help anybody. They want to ignore them all and stuff like that, is the way they kind of put it. And it's like, well, I don't want to see all that. I don't want to learn all that. We don't need that. That's just illusions. And I'm like, well, that's fine if you just want to swipe it away. It's all illusions, but it's illusions that you need to deal with, and swiping it away doesn't really seem to do it for me. So I need to see it differently than just swipe it away. I don't really want to suffer from it either, but I need to see it so that I can, you know, truly look through it instead of swiping it away.
Yeah. And that's true. And it goes back to, again, what you said and what Ernesto said, is the only way to make a difference is to get yourself right. And when you can see through it and connect to the Holy Spirit so that you're centered in the truth, then you can make a difference, but only then. As soon as we're in that, if we are in that place of judgment that there's even something to fix, then we've already lost our connection to spirit. We've already judged.
Yeah,
It's
are we
difficult,
in the
but
perception of Christ? If we're in the perception of Christ, we have that choice. Yeah.
An idea that helps me get through whatever's happening. We say it a lot in the class in Tallahassee. Somebody in our class says it a lot, that everything is happening for me. And it's not that there's an opposite to that and against me, no, but it goes with that lesson 193, all things are lessons God would have me learn. And in that way, when I can remember that, no matter what's happening, it's for me. It's for my highest good. And then it's kind of up to me how soon I realize that and how I use it in my life. When I see that, we see, yeah, it could take more or less time, depending on how quick I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Good point. Good point, Pam. Thank you for sharing that. Very powerful.
yeah, thank you. Carol, can I ask you to repeat what you said again? Do you remember that?
Oh, just that it's a choice for us to be in the perception of Christ. So anytime we're disturbed in some communication or thought even within ourselves, is to really just take a look at what eyes are we seeing with, you know? Are we seeing with the body's eyes, or are we seeing with true inner vision?
Good point.
Thank you.
And I would say if there's any judgment in there anywhere, it points to the physical eyes.
Right.
Right.
Have to look at are we saying this is good, this is bad, I don't have time for this, I have time for that, whatever, all those little things that we do. If we could remember.
It's an element of trust, I guess, you know, and meditation every day does help with that. I think building that trust.
Vigilance and trust. You're right, Carol.
Yeah, with the Tallahassee group, we just started, we went through the entire book and kind of grew out of everything. And so somebody said, well, how about we start back at the beginning of the workbook? And so I think we're on lesson 2.
Ah, that's great.
And seeing that, I remember, Pam, you looking out onto your property there and seeing, you know, like, did I plant enough pollinator plants? Do I have enough? Da, da, da. It's the stuff that I will do too, as I've got all the garden out here. And oh God, it's just constant. It's like I couldn't have enough people helping me with all this stuff because I'd figure out something else to do. Yeah, it's that kind of stuff that just makes you weary just thinking about it. And will I have this need in 20 years when, I'm sitting in an urn? Well, not I, but the ashes will, or whatever. It's like we put permanence to something that is totally impermanent.
Unless you can just simply do it with joy, right?
Yeah, that we can do whatever we can do.
Mm-hmm.
Some can do less, some can do a little more, but again, that's just a measurement of what it's staying present and not losing yourself in what could appear as a problem instead of as an opportunity to just, okay, I realize I'm doing this now. Let's come back to center, whatever that is, and just rest with that. The one lesson, I rest in God. That pretty much sums it up. What if we could do that constantly?
Okay.
So, anyway.
How about we continue with the inner shift and see what that has to say. The inner shift. Are thoughts then dangerous? To bodies, yes. The thoughts that seem to kill are those that teach the thinker that he can be killed. And so he dies because of what he learned. He goes from life to death. The final proof he valued the inconstant more than constancy. Surely he thought he wanted happiness, yet he did not desire it because it was the truth, and therefore must be constant. The constancy of joy is a condition quite alien to your understanding. Yet, if you could even imagine what it must be, you would desire it, although you understand it not. The constancy of happiness has no exceptions, no change of any kind. It is unshakable, as is the love of God for his creation. Sure, in its vision, as its creator is in what he knows, happiness looks on everything and sees it is the same. It sees not the ephemeral, for it desires everything be like itself, and sees it so. Nothing has power to confound its constancy, because its own desire cannot be shaken. It comes as surely unto those who see the final question is necessary to the rest, as peace must come to those who choose to heal and not to judge. Reason will tell you that you cannot ask for happiness inconstantly. For if what you desire, you receive, and happiness is constant, then you need ask for it but once to have it always. And if you do not have it always, being what it is, you did not ask for it. For no one fails to ask for his desire of something he believes holds out some promise of the power of giving it. He may be wrong in what he asks, where and of what, yet he will ask because desire is a request, an asking for, and made by one whom God himself will never fail to answer. God has already given all that he really wants, yet what he is uncertain of, God cannot give, for he does not desire it while he remains uncertain. And God's giving must be incomplete unless it is received. You who complete God's will and are his happiness, whose will is powerful as his, a power that is not lost in your illusions. Think carefully why you have not yet decided how you would answer the final question. Your answer to the others has made it possible, to help you be already partly sane. And yet it is the final one that really asks if you are willing to be wholly sane. What is the holy instant but God's appeal to you to recognize what he has given you? Here is the great appeal to reason, the awareness of what is always there to see, the happiness that could be always yours. Here is the constant peace you could experience forever. Here is what denial has denied, revealed to you. For here the final question is already answered, and what you ask for given. Here is the future, now. For time is powerless because of your desire for what will never change. For you have asked that nothing stand between the holiness of your relationship and your awareness of its holiness. And there it is, right? We can have happiness always if we ask for it completely. I was thinking about that too as I was reading. Just imagine that you were given one day to live, just one, not like unlimited time, one day to live. Wouldn't you choose to see only happiness in everything, even an argument? Wouldn't you even see the happiness in the ability to have an argument? You know, I have this ability to have I have an ability to cry if I want to cry. And in that, even in that, you can find joy, right? And happiness, that you have the ability to be in this experience of touching and feeling and having emotions and having senses to taste and jump or just feel the water with your fingers. You know, if we could just see that in every day, just imagining we only have one day to choose joy in everything we see, in everything we feel, and everything we experience. My husband and I have gotten into this little game that we play now. If one of us is complaining about something, we'll say to the other one, now say that with joy. And it's funny how all of a sudden something that you would complain about just inadvertently, you know, you have to think about, well, how can I say that with joy? And it's just a fun little way of catching yourself and, you know, just having a conversation about it.
You know, there's a article that I read this morning about a psychiatrist or psychologist that written a book called Us. And it goes into exactly what you have just said. The end of it says, and I guess the book is about being able to say the most outrageous whatever thing with kindness.
Yeah.
Oh,
right.
no.
And it's an exercise. You have to think about it, you know, and it's vigilance. You know, how can I say that with joy? How can I say that with kindness and with love?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
Well, we have another chapter to start if we're ready. Chapter 22, Salvation and the Holy Relationship. Are we ready to keep going, or is there any more comments on what we just read?
Muted. Didn't realize I was muted. I think it's really interesting what you just were talking about. I'm just trying to see that, you know, when I'm trying to help myself by remembering something that helps me to remember something, so I'm on my way towards the right path again, I guess. So that's good. That's good. So this is the final question this is talking about, which goes back to the previous section about
Right.
the question. So the final question was the one I really think that I would like to answer. That final question, that's the most important one to me. I can see that. But it seems to me that maybe I do need to ask myself these other questions first, such as how can I say that with kindness or love or joy or anything other than suffering otherwise.
Right.
Yeah. So maybe you got hit on something there that sounds pretty interesting. I might just try that. I like to say, I told you about the Ho'oponopono back some time ago. I was reading it with some people, and I was really enjoying that process. But there was one chapter that was sort of sort of out of it. Like they had a seminar, and they had a lot of people invited to the seminar, and all these people were listening to healing and speaking about the Ho'oponopono and how, in fact, you could clean yourself of anything, and therefore you could become truly helpful, and so on and so forth to other people. And it was wonderful that they all had this seminar. And then the next chapter was really about all the people that attended it. There's 4 of them or 5 of them or something like that that had attended the seminar, that they honed in on what happened to them the next week. Like, what did they do in their lives the next week? So they had some of these amazing things that happened in their lives, and I was like, wow, who cares about all that? Everything I was reading was like, why would they think that's incredible? Like, they think that's some kind of miracle or something like that. These just normal things that they're looking at. And I thought to myself, like, what is wrong with me that I have to see that? They were excited. They had a lot of joy in meeting him and understanding his simple system. And here I am trying to use his simple system against them. So they're making something much more complicated out of the world outside themselves, more important to themselves than his simple system, is the way I'm looking at it. And it's like, why do I have to do that? Why do I have to turn things around before I can see what I'm doing? It's like,
Right.
I want to reverse that now. Okay, so now I reverse it. And then I reverse that, and I say, but something else comes up a little later, and I started on somebody else.
Yeah. Maybe the question is, how can I see that with joy?
How can I see that with joy?
There.
Yeah, thank you.
Hmm.
I can see that with joy.
Okay. Let's go ahead. And that just reminded me of the memorial you had for Joy. Just like her name. I was just thinking of that.
Yeah. I mean, there is a line in here also that says that I always try to, if I find myself getting agitated, that says, teach only love, for it is what you are.
Yeah.
Right. And to have peace, teach peace, to be peace, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's keep going to the next chapter. Chapter 22, Salvation and the Holy Relationship Introduction. Take pity on yourself, so long enslaved. Rejoice, whom God hath joined, have come together and need no longer look on sin apart. No two can look on sin together, for they could never see it in the same place and time. Sin is a strictly individual perception, seen in the other, yet believed by each to be within himself. And each one seems to make a different error, and one the other cannot understand. Brother, it is the same, made by the same, and forgiven for its maker in the same way. The holiness of your relationship forgives you and your brother, undoing the effects of what you both believed and saw. And with their going is the need for sin gone with them. Who has need for sin? Only the lonely and alone, who see their brothers different from themselves. It is this difference, seen but not real, that makes the need for sin not real, but seen, seem justified. And all this would be real if sin were so. For an unholy relationship is based on differences, where each one thinks the other has what he has not. They come together, each to complete himself and rob the other. They stay until they think that there is nothing left to steal, and then move on. And so they wander through a world of strangers, unlike themselves, living with their bodies, perhaps under a common roof that shelters neither, in the same room, and yet a world apart. A holy relationship starts from a different premise. Each one has looked within and seen no lack. Accepting his completion, he would extend it by joining with another, whole as himself. He sees no difference between these selves, for differences are only of the body. Therefore, he looks on nothing he would take. He denies not his own reality because it is the truth. Just under heaven does he stand, but close enough not to return to earth. For this relationship has heaven's holiness. How far from home can a relationship so like heaven be? Think what a holy relationship can teach. Here is belief in differences undone. Here is the faith in differences shifted to sameness. And here is sight of differences transformed to vision. Reason now can lead you and your brother to the logical conclusion of your union. It must extend, as you extended when you and he joined. It must reach out beyond itself, as you reached out beyond the body to let you and your brother be joined. And now the sameness that you saw extends and finally removes all sense of differences, so that the sameness that lies beneath them all become apparent. Here is the golden circle where you recognize the Son of God. For what is born into a holy relationship can never end. Anybody have any thoughts about that?
I was going to say some pity to all those before you had that vision. So when you really see clearly, you don't have so many expectations of yourself and others.
True.
You just
Yeah.
appreciate.
I feel like there's been so many relationships I've been in that each one has taught me more about loving myself. And as you go through it and you learn that there is only you and that there is only extension within that relationship, you finally get to that place where you have no expectations from your brother, from your relationship. You're just only love. You can be only love.
Well said. Yeah.
I liked your idea of asking if I only have this one day left. And it made me think of, like, with my husband Lee having cancer, I've for the past few months, I didn't know which way it was going to go, and I would think, well, what if we don't have much more time together? But of course, I mean, it goes that way with all of us.
Right.
But it was closer to home, and so I could really look at that in myself and try to remember that and when the stuff would come up, be grateful that it's coming up to be let go of, because if stuff wasn't in there, it wouldn't come up.
Right.
And to not be critical of myself or judgmental, but to always just be grateful, like what I said earlier, that's happening for me. So if I have something that comes up that is less than love, and the quicker I notice that, the better. I can just be more present in my relationship with the time we have together. But I like bringing it back down to myself. What about I just have this one day? Because that covers all my relationships.
Right.
Yeah. But I got this vision, Pam, as you were saying that. I don't know where these things just pop in, but it's like we're trapped underwater and we're fighting for a breath. And what you're talking about prompted in me that every time we recognize that there's a need that we can actually bless instead of recoil from it. It's like we pop up and grab another piece of air, and we'll stay there for as long as we can until we sink back down, and then, oh no, I'm in the murk, I can't breathe, whatever. Just these little guys pop in.
Good analogy.
That reminds me of what the chapter we just read, do I desire a world I rule instead of one that rules me? It's those questions. Do I desire a world where I am powerful instead of helpless? Do I desire a world in which I have no enemies and cannot sin? And we vacillate on all of those, right? Like what Tim just said, you come up for air and then you sink back down. You come up for air and then you sink back down until you answer the last question, which is, and do I want to see what I denied because it is the truth? Right? Why are we so afraid to ask that last question and to allow ourselves to just keep sinking back down? Why is that last question so hard to answer? Why can't we just say, I don't want to deny the truth anymore. I choose to see always.
Well, we've spent lifetimes trying to make friends with this thing we call the ego. And then everyone else out there is sort of doing the same thing, but we disagree all the time with other egos, our mates and our daughters and sons and whatever. There's always a difference of opinion.
We can't do it alone either. So.
What's that, Eric?
Right.
Complication, I think, is that we can't do it alone. We would. I think the answer. I'm not really afraid of the question, but I see the answer blazing out in front of me, and yet I seem to not be able to do it all the time. I do see the truth, and I rest in the truth a lot of times, and I feel strengthened by the fact that I'm resting in the truth. I see using reason for the increasing of peace and kindness and joy and love, but I also see I seem to let it go sometimes. I also see I seem to be agitated about something or too judgmental about something or whatever. And these are not really harmful things or anything, but I don't let myself see only just, I want to see only the truth. I still
Right.
seem to need to deny it for a moment while I do something else. Excuse me, but I have to tell you that's just not up to speed over there, And that's the way that the world works, so ingrained in my mind, and well, I get a lot more out of reading A Course in Miracles these days, though, than I did way back when I read it once. I read it once with a nice woman and a nice little group, and we read through the Course in Miracles. It took more than a year, and we thought we were learning something or another, but I didn't really retain very much. And it was in 2008 when I started looking at it again and started realizing like what I was missing. Wow.
I feel like every time I go through it, it's like
This is this
polishing the lens,
Yeah,
right?
this is in this book. What we're
Here.
missing is in this book. Yeah, it is polishing the lens. Yeah,
Yeah,
polishing anything too. Like polishing my ideas about you or somebody else or whatever helps me see through that illusion that I've built up about it.
Right.
Polishing off the worries and difficulties and disagreements and so on like that.
And Carol said it too, it's just having that vigilance to do the meditation, to get your mind set, to choose Christ's vision first thing in the morning, to set that intention, right? And how many of us are doing that work?
Yeah.
It says it right here also in paragraph 4. And here is sight of differences transformed to vision. So yeah, it is polishing the lens and actually shifting the lens, like the eye doctors do, and they bring clarity.
Yeah.
That's true.
Good.
Clearer and clearer. Sure.
Yeah, I'll share something. That this was when I found this out, I was absolutely shocked. We had a leader at Unity North Side here. This is many decades ago, and I remember, and my wife was there. We had, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, 6 of us at any given time, but he talked about how the course helped him get through some really dark times in his life. And yeah, it might have been another couple of months or so, 3 or 4 months, I don't know, after that. And there was these two women that were murdered on a beach, I don't know, St. George or something here. And we came out to find it. I was absolutely shocked that it was this fellow that was our teacher. And I remember sharing in the lunchroom that day that I heard of, that it was totally incongruent with how I knew him. And I remember one of the guys that I worked with was totally disgusted by what I said. It's like, oh no, he is a sick person, and it's good he's gone. He killed himself. He wrote you may have heard of this, but left a suicide note in the car after he killed these two, because there'd been others before that. And it was such a dramatic thing. I see him as this, this great being, and the world will remember him as this mass murderer. So, as Ted would say, well, how is that working for me? Well, I'll continue to see him as a healer, because that's what he was trying to do. He just lost the struggle with the ego side. And well, he didn't lose it. He's just gonna have to repeat it someplace else. And again, there was a lot of suffering and parents that miss the children and all that kind of stuff. And there's a war going on right now. So how serious are we going to make this? I don't think we need to make it serious at all. That's our problem.
And I think when it's something like that hits so close to home, right? It's easy for the ego to take over, and it's easy for you to align with fear because it's unthinkable and it's confusing and it doesn't make sense, because what the ego does never make sense. And so all of a sudden your mind goes into this like rabbit hole, and the ego really has you, and it's, can be hours or days or weeks or even years before you finally are then able to align with the truth and with love. But I think the challenge there again is, the vigilance, and how quickly can you then choose to align with the Holy Spirit and choose to align with Christ's vision versus getting grabbed and following that rabbit hole where the ego wants to bring you. Right?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I chose not to leave. I think I got up from my lunch and walked out of the room, and whatever. You can think what you want, but I knew the guy. I think that's what I said. I really knew him.
Yeah.
So anyway.
But then you knew the guy as the body, right? Which is not the guy. I mean, when you see the body and you're using the body's eyes to see the body, then you're still not seeing the truth of who he is, right?
Yeah. But I felt that truth, Terry, and when he would read and share stuff that,
right.
I don't know. I think my wife had a sense that there's something just not right, but whatever. That's all in time.
All in time, and the illusion of the world and all of that.
Nobody really can disagree or agree with you. You had a personal experience of seeing yourself through him in a way that was helpful to you. So nobody should disagree or agree with you.
Yeah.
It's your experience.
Excellent, Eric. That was perfect.
Good summation. Yeah.
I can also see how my experience with the same man that Tim's talking about, because I also knew him from in relation to the course, and I think I was also able to forgive him and not see him, in that sinner role. And I think how it really helped me is when it hit even much closer to home than I was to this man, was when my stepson shook his baby, 6-month-old baby. So it was my step grandson, and killed him. And so this is someone who I knew, and I could also forgive him and still have a relationship with him, a very loving one. And I think it just, that experience with this Robert helped me with him. It's just, I've done it there. I can do this again. It was like, I don't know, practice or whatever for something that was harder.
Good point.
Could have been harder. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, good.
Practice of forgiveness. Yeah. I mean, there's always an opportunity to learn, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Great point.
Well,
Thank you for sharing that. Does anybody else have anything to add in conclusion, since we're at the 1:30 mark? Boy, we've had some powerful shares today. Really want to thank all of you for bringing up all of your discussions and your experiences, because I think that's how we all learn. It's
it
great.
really
Thank you.
helps.
I enjoyed today. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks to
Me
everyone.
too.
Everyone had great points. Thank you, everyone. All right, we shall see you all next week.
Bye.
Hopefully you'll be
Thank
All
you.
right.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Love
Love
you
you
guys.
all.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.